Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bowls and Beers. We've got a new old look cast this week on Monday. We got a bit of a late start. We're waiting for Tim. He'll be here. We don't know quite when, but he'll be here. He gave us a heads up. Normally we start at 11, delayed a bit. Can't wait any longer. You see in the bottom, you see two new faces. One is Dave Brand, back from the dead. Maybe not totally dead, but he's back. He's joined us in small doses over the last couple of weeks. Come back after leaving at the end of last academic year, and it's really good to have him back. And he's able to join this week. We worked him up into such a lather last week that he said he was coming back. And then we've also got Drew, who you recognize from at least Twitter, and he started to write for us this year. He's been doing a weekly post, and he's in the comment section a bit. I don't think we have much of a reach into the student body community, but if we do, you definitely know Drew, who was really involved with True Blue before his graduation. Loosely, he's taking over the spot that John had before John went off and had real life stuff, and we hope to get John back in the spring. With that, I see that Tim's online, so he'll be joining us any minute. So maybe I'll stall until he wants to do his monologue every week. We'll see how quickly he gets on here. We're coming off a win over Ohio, 41-17. Really, I think a surprising win. Defense got 2 more touchdowns. This game was really over at halftime. I think there were times where Ohio got some momentum in the second half, but they were never able to pull closer than 14. And we really saw UB succeed by shutting down one entire facet of the Ohio offense and then forcing them to beat them through the air. And the Bobcats weren't able to do that. If I go too long, Tim's going to jump in and his monologue will be outdated. And he's got his rhythm down for this. Let's see, what else does he have to say? Oh, the big thing with Ohio is that they always fall apart in November, and it's not November yet, and they're starting to fall apart. They were really ravaged by injuries, which is a unfortunate thing to see. I think UB's been pretty lucky with injuries so far this year. Anthony Taylor went down, but we've all kind of known that Jordan Johnson is a capable backup, a capable return guy. And now really, all of a sudden, UB looks like they're in okay position for the rest of the year. They're really through the hard part of the schedule. Northern Illinois is still left, but the 4 other games are all against teams who don't look very strong this year. Miami, Akron, Kent State, and UMass. There's a chance for 4 wins there. There's certainly a chance for the 3 wins that UB needs to get bowl eligibility for only the 3rd time since joining the MAC. And we'll see what we got. First up this week is Miami, and we'll get to them in a minute. It is a short week. It's the first time since 2011 that UB hasn't had the Saturday off before their first midweek MACtion game. Before we get to that, we want to stick with kind of Ohio first. Kind of, guys, what are your thoughts on Ohio? I think we'll go to Drew first. His first appearance on Bowls and Beers.
Definitely. So hi everyone. I'm glad to be here with you guys. So just kind of some rundown from what my thoughts were. I think the thing that I found most impressive was just something that Matt touched upon was the run defense. So I know kind of watching this game leading up to it, I had some bad flashbacks to last year. Just AJ Ouellette, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, just running all over us. He went for close to 160 yards last year with 2 touchdowns. So holding that offense to 54 yards just gives a lot of credit to Brian Borland's scheme. He kind of accomplished something that Lou Tepper and Jeff Quinn weren't able to do. Obviously, AJ Ouellette didn't really have many carries at all because he was filling in for their stud linebacker, Brian Poling. So we had Patterson, the backup, kind of taking the majority of the carries. So maybe that was a reason why we were able to kind of have that efficiency on the run defense. But hey, I'll take it. So I guess that was kind of the main point that stood out for me was the rush defense. The other thing, too, is just forcing turnovers. So 4 turnovers for the game, that was huge. Obviously, Okezie Alozie with his 2 interceptions, Williamson with his 1. Just a nice all-around effort by the defense, I thought.
Yeah, it seems like the defense is what drives this team right now, and goodness knows we've, for the last month, talked about all different kind of chinks in the armor for this team right now, and it started to look, especially against Central Michigan, like the defense might be gone, but it looks like that the Central Michigan game was the aberration. Tim is here. Tim, you're smiling, so I think you're booted up with the connection. Tim, I gave my version of your monologue and kicked to Drew for what he liked about the game, but now I turn it back over to you.
Oh, I don't get my doc up yet. Hold on.
Okay. Well, then I'll keep talking. That's fine.
Keep going. You keep going.
I'll go to me next, just because I think it dovetails well with Drew's point. I also was very pleased with the run defense, and I'm perfectly fine with giving up 300-plus yards passing if it comes with less than 2 yards per carry rushing. That really allows Brandon Berry and Okezie Alozie to pin their ears back, and that's the defense's playmakers. I was really glad to see, in addition to run defense, Justin Brandon, a true freshman D lineman, get in on a couple sacks. Really impressive there. What I especially liked, even more than the run defense, I kind of mentioned it to start, was the opening. In the opening, that second half, UB was up 18 going into the half. I should know that. I don't. I'm sorry. UB was up multiple scores going into the second half. And there were times in the third quarter they had that blocked field goal, and Ohio scored somewhere in there where it looked like maybe the Bobcats had a bit of momentum, and that never really materialized. And I was really glad to see that. That's something that UB has threatened on the other end, and they haven't been able to finish out a comeback this year. But it's something they've threatened in the other direction this year, and I was glad to see this defense, which is very young. We should still remember that, not succumb to kind of times when the Bobcats started to flip the momentum. Dave or Conrad? Dave, I know you ended up missing a good portion of the game. Conrad, I know you've always got stuff to say, so either one of you two.
Okay, I'll just say, an interesting thing for me was looking at Johnson, who at times looked like the better back. Not last week, he had a really bad week against CMU, but this week he played decently, and his numbers look great, but they were padded by that last long run. But otherwise, he was decent. I'm interested in seeing the difference between one back running the ball 20 or 30 times like we've seen in 2012 and 13 and 14 with Quinn, and what we've seen this year where we have two backs kind of splitting 10 to 15 carries. But it seemed nice to have one thing we haven't had, which is that big run, that 20-plus, 30-plus yard run, and that's something that you talk about when you get one back who is getting his 18th, 19th, 20th carry. The defense is getting more tired, and he's in a rhythm. And I think this is kind of the first time, maybe the second time we've seen it. I think he had a big run at FAU, but usually it's been Johnson. We haven't really seen that breakaway run, that knockout run from Taylor yet. So I don't know where. I think sample size is small, so I don't really know what to take away from that. But it was nice to see us have that big play and hopefully carry that running momentum into our final swing, because I think the next 4 games we have an advantage offensive line and running backs over the defensive lines we're going to face. Otherwise, it was a good game. Licata had, I don't think anyone called for Licata's head or for Tony Daniel this week. He managed the game. Another rare game without a passing touchdown, but he did have a running touchdown and effectively managed the game. And when our defenders are running it into the end zone, it makes it harder to pad your stats because you don't get as many plays and as many possessions. So I think everybody was happy with the effort, and those are the things that were interesting to me.
Yeah, this was kind of a pendulum swing from the Ken Licata win when he's being asked to throw 45 times. Really swung in the other direction. As run-heavy as the game felt to me, that it still took until those kneel downs for there to be more rushing attempts than passes. But Licata threw for 212, didn't have a touchdown, but also didn't have an interception. And as Drew said, turnovers, really mistakes were the name of this game. And I thought, I said it in the Good, Bad, Ugly post, what were the biggest mistakes of that game? Licata missed Marcus McGill in the third quarter on that weird New England Patriots play where they split an offensive lineman out and had a fullback run down the field, and McGill was open on the heavy side of the field. And then Ohio had 2 3rd and 13 conversions. Those were really the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes from UB. I'll take that any day. Dave, you waved me off before. Do you have anything to say beyond?
Sure, definitely. Maybe here comes negative Nelly. Here we go. It starts again. I think you're seeing a lot of what's happening with UB is this is a pattern that we're having over and over again. We lost some big games, and we're sitting in 3-4. We've got a very easy game next week, Miami of Ohio 1-7, and you got Kent at 3-5. It's kind of be like Bowling Green a couple years ago when we had an easy schedule, and then we had Bowling Green at the Ralph at the end of the season. Our next really big test is in 3 weeks against Northern Illinois, sitting at 5-3. I do expect 2 more victories. I expect us to beat Miami of Ohio. I expect us to beat Kent. Get us to 5-4. For this season to be a success, I think we have to beat Northern Illinois. But again, UMass sitting at 1-6. But that being said, they also gave Toledo a hell of a scare last week, and you got Akron, who's okay. So it's going to be an interesting 3 or 4 weeks and see what Lance has, what Joe can end the season at and Kerr at. So this is going to be an interesting number 3-4 weeks.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Tim, it's all you, and then you can take your moderator hat back.
So I'll take my ball. The only thing I'll say about what Dave says, I think, is it not tracking me again? Okay. I think that setting the bar at we have to beat NIU for the season to be a success is a little high. I would have said, I think beating Ohio, and I think if we win out other than NIU and go 7-5 for a first-year coach, I think that's a successful year, especially that'd be the 3rd best season Buffalo's had in the Division I era. But I do agree with a lot of what Dave said. I don't think Akron and UMass are pushovers at all. UMass not only gave Toledo a heck of a time, UMass also gave Temple, who is 7-0 and ranked in the top 25, a really hard time. UMass is one of those teams that can put together 30 solid minutes of football whenever they seem to want to. They just don't seem to have much more than that, but I could see them giving us real problems. Akron, I'm not going to make them a thing, but they, but they do manage to play tough defenses once in a while. Although playing Ohio tough does not look as impressive as it did 3 weeks ago. So with that said, let's move on to our players of the game. Connor, you took McGill. I hate you. All right, let's start with Matt, because I went first last week. I go last this week. And Connor had just took the guy who I was going to pick, so now I got to think while the other guys go. So, Matt, who's your player of the game and why?
Oh, and why? Wow.
I need time.
My player of the game is Ryan Williamson, and this was a bit of a tough decision for me. I think someone else took Alozzi before I did, but I probably would have taken Williamson anyway. It's really important for UB this season to grab the momentum. That Pitsonka fumble return against Florida Atlantic really changed the momentum of the game right before halftime. They didn't grab the momentum right away against Albany in the season opener. And even though Ohio would score more points after Williamson grabbed that interception return, that was really UB did not start this game well. I think Vic was 5 for 5 on 3rd downs. Or they converted a couple 3rd downs, and Vic was 5 for 5 on their opening drive. They marched right down the field. UB had their customary opening drive 3 and out, and and that play by Williamson really shifted it. And beyond that, Williamson could have had three interceptions. Alozzi could have had 3. Williamson could have had 3 in this game as well. I'm scrolling down to see what he did other than the interceptions. He had 9 total tackles, and then that was it, 9 total tackles. But that's a real strong day from a guy who is young and part of this young defense. I think it's really emblematic of things. Williamson hits hard, and if he's starting to get an eye for the ball, that could be a really dangerous thing for this offense. Conrad pointed out in his Vine recap, Williamson didn't really, or maybe on Twitter, but Williamson didn't play his man there. He kept his eyes on the ball, and that ball was rattling around like a pinball. And that interception return was not an easy return. It wasn't Alozzi jumping a hitch route and having open grass. He had to get through some bodies there, and that really swung the game. And I thought he was an impact player for the rest of the game too. And like I said, he could have had a couple more interceptions. I thought he has a knack for getting to the ball. He has a knack for making hard hits, and I was really pleased to see that. I'm excited about all of UB's safeties right now.
All right, so Drew's up next. Drew got the one we were all thinking of because he got in the pregame sheets and filled it out first, I think.
I actually didn't. I actually picked Akizi Alozzi simply because someone had to. So looking at his performance and just kind of analyzing the player that he's become over the course of the year. I kind of expected him to take on an Adam Redden-esque role under Lou Tepper's scheme, converting from safety to a linebacker, kind of that edge pass rusher. But I think that he's excelled more in coverage this year, just being able to drop back in coverage more and then used as a threat to rush the passer has worked out really well for him. And the one thing that kind of impressed me the most was that one-handed snag that was low and behind him, just showing off his hands and great ability there. Didn't have too many tackles on the day. I think that he only had 3 tackles, but he also had 1 sack. So just kind of a nice all-around performance by him. And the other guy that I just want to recognize too is Nick Gilbo and the presence that he's really added to this UB defense. You know, with Jarrett Franklin kind of having the injury, he was kind of an unknown semi going into this year. So Nick Gilbo had 15 tackles in the last game alone. I think he's close to 50 on the year. So he's just been a really important cog in the defense, especially for that run defense. Again, holding Ohio under 60 yards rushing. So he might not fill up the stat sheet all around with sacks, interceptions, and tackles, but he's just been really important in stopping that run.
All right, Conrad, you can go either way you want to go. You can take Hawkins, you can take Johnson, or you can take McGill. It's on you.
I could take Hawkins. That'd be really weird. I think he was 1 for 1 in the game.
Yeah, it's. I got Hawkins on the brink. I wanted to see more of him, but take what you want.
Well, I'm just going to throw out. Well, one thing I said last week was that someone has to step up and be the number 1 wide receiver. In 2008, when we had a similar start, we saw Naaman Roosevelt take the game to the next level. He scored a touchdown in every one of our final games. And someone had to step up to be number 1. I thought that someone would be Ron Willoughby. However, we look at the targets. No one had more targets than McGill. He had 13 last week. He had this Weiser and Willoughby had 13 combined. So McGill was the obvious number 1 at least last week. So that would be MVP's like performance. But I'm not going to pick McGill. I'm going to pick Jordan Johnson. Once again, I think the biggest problem we have, the 2 biggest problems we have on offense is our red zone execution, our short yards execution, and our explosive plays. So we're very low in plays that are 20 yards or longer. We're very low in our conversions in short yards, and we've been awful in the red zone. Johnson kind of set the tone early, took a toss, made a great cut because every block was made but one. One guy missed his block, and it stopped. Normally, if he just went straight, it would have stopped it for probably a 3-yard loss. He made a great cut and then put his head down and went straight for the end zone, and no one can stop him when he does that. It's kind of why we jokingly call him Slalom, because he can make a cut and he can go downhill when he runs. And then, he capped it off at the end with his second touchdown, the big run that kind of sealed the game. There was only 2 minutes left, but I was still nervous until that run went across the plane. And that's the explosiveness we need. If we could have had that at the end of the game in 2 of the games that we played this year, Bowling Green, Nevada, we would have 2 more wins. And so we need to continue to see that with Johnson and hopefully with Taylor when he gets back. So Johnson, 28 rushes, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.25 yards per run. It's a great game, factor-back game, and we're going to need to see more of that down the line. So it's going to be Jordan Johnson for me.
All right. Dave, you have an entire team ahead of you, and only 3 guys have been picked for player of the game. So who do you have?
So I can take the rest of the field? That sounds good.
You can take anyone you want, and I know who you're going to pick on.
You think I'm going to take Boise Ross. Is that who you thought I was going to take, right?
No.
Oh, I was going to take it because I thought he had a great game, but I actually want to talk. I think it's going to be Weiser. I just think he has been Joe's go-to guy. I think what's ended up happening is you're seeing that they're having to put safety coverage over a tight end, and when you have to do that, it opens up so much. And he's been great when we need when we need a really 4, 5, 6 yard first down. I think Weiser's been amazing. He's gotten the awards. He's been the recognition that he deserves. But I just love watching the field and watching how defenses have to try to scheme for him. Last year was Willoughby. This year it's Weiser.
Who was the tight end in 2009 that I'm trying to think of who was always a threat for the touchdowns? It was like
Jesse Rack.
Jesse Rack.
Was it Rack? Yeah. Yeah, it was like a blip season, but yeah, Weiser's not scoring the touchdowns like that, but I agree with you, Dave. He really is changing the pass coverage teams have to throw at us. All right, so I get McGill then, who I think made Licata look a lot better than he played. I don't think Joe played a bad game, but a couple of McGill's catches were just phenomenal catches. Not anything that's probably top 10 worthy, but very sound catches of balls that probably could have easily been dropped and no one would have. And you would have said, oh, it was thrown behind him or it was thrown way ahead of him. McGill averaged more than 10 yards of reception, I think about 10.16. Long reception, 24. And I think that 24 was a critical third down, if I'm not mistaken. And he should have had that touchdown if Licata took a little something off that ball. So that's my player of the game. And with that, we can put Ohio to rest, and we can talk about Miami. Because I wasn't here for the beginning, I don't know how much Matt got into the fact that it's terrible to have these guys play on 4 days rest. Did you read into that too much, Matt?
All I said was that it's the first time since 2011 that we haven't had the Saturday off before our first midweek game. So if you have a spiel, you can deliver it better than I can.
No, I mean, I'm so annoyed. I don't want to get into it because I'll suck up a ton of time just to say, you know what? The MAC failed miserably, and they failed 4 teams. They failed Miami, they failed Buffalo, they failed Eastern Michigan and Western Michigan. They particularly failed Buffalo and Western Michigan, who have to travel on Wednesday to be there for Thursday after playing on Saturday. And that, if you think about just that kind of schedule, that's nuts. There's no way that should be allowed to happen. I'm okay with Maction. I'm okay with the attention. I'm not okay with running kids ragged who should be students first. Because we are humble, we make our kids play 2 games in 5 calendar days.
Tim?
Yeah.
Does it really count if you have to play Miami in the second game? I think it's more of a scrimmage.
I would say that in a week's rest, but I think Miami was home on Saturday too, if I'm not mistaken. Which means basically Miami has had a normal week, more or less, and Buffalo has to travel to Miami, and that's punishment enough going to Oxford, Ohio. But then to do that on 4 days rest and have to play Miami, you worry about fatigue and injuries and depth.
Hey, Conrad, you may know this, Conrad. That's a bus ride or is that a flight?
Yeah, I never took the trip, but I assume it was a flight. Oh, I think the longest bus is Bowling Green. That's 6. So I think outside of that, I think it's a flight. Cincinnati, that's
a 6-hour ride. I have to do that for work. You can, if they've got a straight charter, that makes sense, but you can't get direct with any flights to. So maybe they do fly into Kentucky, the old Kentucky airport.
All right. So I mean, because the timeline and everything, and because of Conrad, I think Conrad's general attitude Miami is warranted, but it's the one everyone holds. Is this kind of a trap game? They changed their quarterback about 3 games ago, and after I believe it was Drew Kummer, how am I saying that right? Threw 4 picks against, was that Western? I forget who it was. He threw 4 picks, and they basically benched him. Now they have Billy Ball in there, and he started terribly. He's a freshman. Had a terrible first game and second game, and actually had statistically a pretty decent game last week. He seems to be getting better and more comfortable with time on the field. Now he's at home, rested. I mean, could this be a scary game where, how awful would it be to have 5 wins and look at a Miami loss on the schedule? What's the likelihood of us losing this game? Matt?
Well, I don't think it's a trap game. I think it could be a trap game for fans like me who were so desperate for positivity that I just, gave up with anything. But I'm going to have fun this week, damn it, against Ohio. And now they won, and now we're going undefeated the rest of the year, and the whole world's going to fall apart. We're going to get the Access Bowl slot, and we're going to upset Duke in the Access Bowl, and everything's going to be great.
The most unlikely thing you just said was Duke was in the Access Bowl. Just keep going.
Hey, all they got to do is get to Clemson, and then you know how Clemson operates. So, Duke's good. Duke's all right. Anyway, I think there are some people, myself included, although I've done a little bit better of tempering my emotions on the blog, for whom this could be, from a fan's perspective, a trap game. I'm looking at Miami and I'm saying, all right, Miami's beaten an FCS team, played no one else close except for Cincinnati, who looks worse and worse as the season goes on compared to early season, and Kent State, who I don't think very highly of Kent State. I don't think that UB themselves have played well enough to treat this as, to fall into a trap game situation. I don't think that one game really means anything for them, and I think they know that they haven't proven anything yet. They're still under 500. They're still fighting to even have an equal record. I haven't even gone to look at bowl projections because nobody will include a sub-500 team in a bowl projection, but I think that they will get there eventually. The thing about Miami is, I mentioned they played Kent State and they played them close. Other than that, they've played teams that you certainly wouldn't expect them to even be within sniffing distance. They obviously had a big blowout loss at Wisconsin. That's going to happen. I mentioned that close Cincinnati game, which I'm still not sure how that happened. They had that close game against Kent, which they're both bottom-tier teams in the conference. And then everyone else they've played, Western Kentucky might be one of the top, depending on how the American shakes out, might be one of the top 3 G5 teams. Northern Illinois and Western Michigan are battling for number 2 in the MAC West right now. And then they lost by 31 to Ohio before Ohio went into its late season slumber and injury problems. They haven't really faced anyone in the middle of the MAC yet, which I think we've seen UB fits into the middle of the MAC. And so, do they scare me? No. And they don't scare me because they give up too many rushing yards and they don't rush enough themselves. They're only averaging 118 yards per game on the ground, and UB's run defense showed against Ohio that they can shut that down and force the team to be one-dimensional. And they're giving up more than 140 games in the other direction. UB's offense showed last week that we do have a running back who we can give the ball time and time again and not ask Joe Licata to throw it 45 times. And so in a world of run and stop the run, I think UB's got the advantage on both sides there, and that's what I keep coming back to when I try to find reasons to have some stress about this game, other than the short week, which is a whole different ball of wax.
You made a great point there about their run game. What confuses me is their top few backs actually have a pretty good per yard carry. So I don't know. I don't know if it's schematic or if they're just failing a lot in third down. I haven't had a chance to dig into the stats, but they seem to get some yards. They seem to run pretty well. But you're right, they don't run very often, and that reminds me of I think it was Central when we looked at them, where it was a team that actually had a couple of decent running backs, but for some reason went really pass heavy.
Yeah, I'm kind of talking to a Miami guy right now for the other SB Nation blog that I sometimes write for, and more try to combat misinformation than actually write for. But he says that Miami played 18 freshmen against Western Michigan, so they're kind of in all hands on deck mode right now. And I would bet that they're playing from behind so frequently they're not running. They're just not running because they're playing from behind so much. But they do have some guys with all right numbers, and they just don't seem to go to them frequently.
Or they're just running against teams that are backed off waiting for long passes because they're behind. That's a good point, too. So anyone else think that this could be a trap, or am I nuts? Drew?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I just don't have any reason to give Miami credibility so far. They've been averaging just over 14 points a game. They've had 23 turnovers, so they're averaging close to 3 turnovers a game. And UB's defense has just shown that they're able to force those turnovers in certain games, as long as we're on the American Sports Network, that is. So I'm just not really concerned about this game so much. Now, whether it's a trap game or not, I don't think you can necessarily classify it as that just because of UB's track record. This game may be closer than some people would like it to be. But again, going into Miami's conversion on third down, so they're actually worse than we are. So I think UB is just around 35% on third down conversions throughout the year so far, which isn't really where I'd like it to be. But Miami's only at 27%. So that's kind of the thing where they're coming from behind and not having the ability to run the ball as much as they'd like. The other stat that kind of jumped out to me is that they're converting half of their red zone drives into touchdowns. So they're kind of in the same boat that we are, except they're getting to the red zone and having to take that field goal attempt. So just with all those three things kind of combined together, it just doesn't really bode well for the matchup for Miami, at least.
Now, what about you, Dave? Am I nuts, or is there anything at all to worry about?
Well, the nuts question, we'll save that for another day, another time. But here's the key: is you've got a kid, Billy Ball, 6'4", big kid, who, guys, remember, this was a big get for Western Michigan. Remember, Western Michigan was touting him as the next big quarterback, and it's interesting that he ended up where he did. Two things that where they're not going to be able to compete is Buffalo does a great job now. Their defensive line is improving. They have a weak offensive line. They're going to get to the quarterback. They're going to sack him. And when you've got a kid who started his second game, it's going to be too much to ask. So yeah, Tim, you're looking too deep into this.
Okay, Conrad, save me.
I think any game could be a trap game when we don't have the confidence in our offense. So if we play like we played against Central Michigan on offense, any game we can't be too confident about. And I think that's something we'll have to be concerned about. Our play on the road has been really bad compared to our play at home. So that's another thing to see if we can go to Miami and actually put together a four-quarter game. That said, I think I'm going to echo what a lot of people said here. I think Drew said, how does a team that's probably average in the MAC end up only scoring 14 points a game? And it's that turnover margin, that negative 13. And if a team is able to move the ball but not able to score, they just play right into the hands of our defense, which is bend and break and opportunistic, looking for a way to take the ball away. Or bend, don't break, if I said. Anyway, so I think Miami kind of offensively plays into the strength of our defense. And I'm looking to Anthony Taylor on offense. We struggled. I think we've been very heavy pass, and we struggled trying to get that passing rhythm. And in the past 2 years against Miami, we haven't even needed the passing rhythm because Anthony Taylor has seriously been running like they burned his scholarship offer in front of his face with a lighter. And I think he's from the area, and every time he plays Miami, he runs like a man with 2 extra legs. It's crazy, and I hope he's healthy because he had 36 runs for 222 yards last year, 17 for 154 in 2013. It's just ridiculous numbers against Miami. So I hope he can do that again. Go ahead.
2013 was the Khalil Mack recovered 90 fumbles or something game. I don't quite remember that, what the numbers were. What's the backstory on Taylor, though? I haven't heard this before.
Oh my goodness! This was when Dave showed up everyone in the media room.
Yep.
So last year we played Miami at home, and we were all doing our thing during the game. Conrad's throwing out stats all the time on Twitter. We're having fun in the game thread. I was visiting school. I was visiting BC, so I wasn't paying attention to the game. And so Dave used the media pass, and Conrad's throwing numbers out and talks about how Taylor at that point had gotten 43% of his yards in his career against Miami or something. And Dave got to ask that question, and Taylor at that moment said, yeah, I grew up really liking Miami. I wanted to go there, and they didn't give me an offer, and so now I really stick it to them. And every other journalist in that room got a story out of that over the next 4 or 5 days. And now it's a real narrative about how Anthony Taylor eats up Miami. And
I didn't hear about the scholarship. I didn't hear Henderson burnt the scholarship offer. I didn't.
No, that's not true. I'm saying he's running as if they did that to him because his yards per carry against Miami in his career is 7.09.
Oh, no doubt. He can drop. If you think about it, he could drop 200 yards and he'd be up around 700-800 yards against him for a career.
Right. But look, Matt says that he's not listed on the depth chart though, and I guess that's another thing with the short turnover to this game. He might not see Taylor, but Johnson, has been playing well, and if Miami hasn't gotten better in the run defense, then it's going to be a career day for Johnson. And then I'll just say this: Joe Licata. Was that his first career game against Miami? His first career start? I think it was. His first career start ever was against Miami.
Right. I believe, and that was back in 2012.
12. And he's 3-0 against Miami. So this, he was never able to overcome Bowling Green, but he could still make sure that Miami has never beat him. And I think for a team that has terrorized Buffalo historically, that would be an amazing feat. And I think it's going to mean something to him, and it's going to mean something to the fans here who remember, going back for the Ben Roethlisberger days, Miami loved to put up 50 on Buffalo. So I've really enjoyed us putting up 50 on them the last couple of years.
Yeah. Now, Taylor was dressed against Ohio. I did see him on the sideline in full uniform.
Yep. So much so that the sports editor of the Spectrum said that he was starting, and you shouldn't listen to those injury rumors, which it's not a rumor if the team calls him questionable. It's not a rumor.
If he's listed as questionable for a game, it's not a rumor. He actually is probably injured.
If he didn't practice, if he was working on the side, he's actually injured. It's not a rumor.
All right. We've had fun at the expense of the Spectrum. I've missed out on the Buffalo News, but they've been doing really good this year, so I actually can't pick on them too much. Let's move on to keys to the game. And since I went last with player of the game, I'm going to go first with keys to the next game. The keys for me are it's just a mistake-free offense. I think our defense, like Conrad said, our defense plays into Miami's weaknesses. I think our defense can hold them at bay, even with just an average day. What we can't do is have a situation like we saw earlier this season, where our offense kept setting up our opponents with short fields. So if our offense plays mistake-free, don't turn the ball over, maybe move it just a little bit and win the field position game, I think we walk out of here with an easy win. Matt?
The dead zone, man. Miami doesn't quite present the same challenge that Ohio does. I don't even think they present the same challenge that injured Ohio does. But UB's got to start scoring from the red zone. And really, a larger theme of that is take advantage of your opportunities. This is a road game on short rest against an inferior team. We've been over that, and no matter how much we want to say, this and that, Miami is an inferior team to Buffalo this season. And don't let them hang around. Don't let them hang around at home. Take advantage of your opportunities. I can live with not scoring on every drive. I can't live with 3 or 4 straight 3-and-outs. Which we didn't see against Ohio. I'll give them that. Tim says our defense is scoring fine from the red zone. That is true. That's part of the field position battle, and that's kind of a slower victory in winning your opportunities. And I don't necessarily, I just want to see UB take advantage of opportunities, not squander things. A win is a win, and that's what I'm looking for this game. But it sure would be nice to see a win and say yes, they deserve that. They didn't leave anything on the table. If UB clearly outplays Miami, but only wins by 7 or 10 points, I might have more doubts about the last stretch of the season than I do right now following a real nice win over Ohio.
All right. Drew, what do you got?
So I kind of would, beggars can't be choosers, but I would like to see UB win a game because of their offense. So looking at our 3 wins, we have Albany, FAU, and Ohio so far. So Albany aside, you have FAU and Ohio, which combine for 5 defensive touchdowns, which doesn't come along to a lot of teams. So I would like to see UB win with their offense. Maybe that's too much to ask, and maybe I should just take the wins we're giving them. But looking at that, just taking that a little bit further, just forcing those turnovers again. I know we've been talking about this the whole time, but Miami's turnover margin is just atrocious. And that's something that we're pretty good at too, so that kind of plays into our strengths. And the other thing too is just forcing that run game. So I would love to see more Jonathan Hawkins, and maybe if someone could figure out how to use Devin Campbell the right way, which I don't know that we're going to see this season or for his career, maybe. So between all those things, I guess the big thing is just I would like to see a game where our offense could kind of take control and be the reason for the victory.
All right. Conrad, what are your keys to the game for Miami, other than just showing up and playing well?
You've just put me in a corner because my keys to the game are the keys to the bus that will take us to the stadium. we show up, we should win this game. We don't win this game, then me and BRJ will be on the same side calling everybody bumps. Got to beat Miami.
Okay, yeah, okay. We can't have that. We can't have Conrad jumping ship. He is the statistical force of optimism on which this blog relies. Dave, what about you?
Sorry. This is a game that UB should just be where they are. I know you say just show up, but too much talent on offense, a defense that's humming along, young quarterback. UB should just listen. Conrad and I remember when Ben Roethlisberger used to just kick the living snot out of us. I still have it, even though we've owned this team the last number of years. I have no problem going there and dropping a 5-0 on them. Just kill them. Kill this team. Kill them until they are dead.
Kill it with fire. Kill it with fire. Don't let up. You're doing it for past generations of UB fans that had to sit there and get trounced 50. I forget what the coach's comment was, like 53-6. And it's like, oh well, we try for perfection, but we'll settle for this.
Yeah, we aim for perfection, but we'll settle for excellence or dominance. It was one of those two words.
Yeah, Miami, you're getting yours, and we, the rest of the MAC, love it. We love it more than Marshall's futility for the past 10 years since they left the conference. All right, that brings us to predictions. I'm going to go last year because I'm going to copy somebody. I don't know who yet. So Matt has Buffalo greater than Miami. That's very, very vague, and I'm not quite sure that qualifies as a proper brew peg pick. Matt, can you please clarify?
Well, I'm actually the new czar of Brewpeg, so that pick's gonna vault me to the lead this week. I almost let Dave change his pick after kickoff last week, but I didn't. I had to stop myself. I think Buffalo is much better than Miami. I am kind of scared of the short week, but I also think that UB's in a much better injury situation than Miami is. I think we'll hear Leipold's press conferences tomorrow, so we'll kind of know by 4 or 5 tomorrow. Hopefully someone at the press conference will maybe ask, I'm sure Mark Gaughan is, he's sharp, he'll ask about kind of the short week and if anyone's dinged up, but it doesn't seem like anyone is. I think that this talk of Miami not being able to turn yards into points and instead turning yards into turnovers really has me going. I'm dialing back some of my optimism by keeping UB under 40 points, but I've got 9 in this one.
I'm sorry, man, you cut out for me. What was your pick?
Okay. I got Buffalo 38-9.
Okay. Drew, what do you got?
So I've got Buffalo 34, Miami 11. Seems kind of an odd score to pick, but hopefully my brew peg strategy works out. It may not, but we'll see.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think it will, but we'll see.
4 years of me trying to gauge numbers like that have failed each and every time.
Hey, Drew, there's a reason why I have relentlessly picked on Conrad, because he would, like, it's like, when you're playing roulette and you put in the corner to try to hedge your bet. Conrad has done that for years, and you've seen his success rate.
All right, maybe this will be the last week I'll do that. Instead, I'll just copy Mark Gaughan's prediction. Maybe that'll work out better for me.
Well,
last week was the first week that Mark Gaughan got a 0.
Oh wow!
So he's like Ohio. He's on a downslide. Someone's gonna catch him.
But yeah, so Buffalo 34, Miami 11.
All right, Conrad.
I don't know, but I've been pretty drunk doing the show. But I've never gamed the brew peg. I pride myself on never picking a 16 because it goes to a 3, and I don't know. I don't even know how that works. I just usually just pick a stupid average and put it together. Last week's almost paid off. We had won by an average score of 30-18. And at a point where it was like 30-10, it was 31-17 or something like that. And I was like real close. I was pretty sure I was going to win this week, but whatever. Jordan Johnson with his stupid last-minute touchdowns. Anyway, so I think we're our offense is pretty. Our offense is going to make up for our defense. We're going to be a little bit. I think a very similar game on offense. I think Miami's lack of scoring will have us. Having a better defensive output, so I'm going to put 41-6 on the board. Big win, 41-6.
That's huge. I'm going to go. I have 35-17 written here, but given some what I'm seeing from you guys, I'm going to dial that down and kind of trust you that you know what you're talking about. I'm going to say 35-11. I'm not going to quite try to game it like Drew is, but I think Miami can score anywhere between 10 and 14 points, and this seems like as safe as a bet as any. And Dave can now go last because he's the one who kind of kicked it off and kicked off Brewpeg. He's back, and he's going to tear into me for gaming. So let's hear what he's got.
As a past Brewpeg champion,
shut up.
I will just say that I do plan on a nice historic ride to the back. Man, if you just gave up and saluted me, I appreciate that. You guys should all do that. I would say 38-13. It's in the book.
Excuse me, 30 or 38? I'm sorry.
38-13.
I don't care who beats Dave, just someone beat him. If he wins it a second time, I will never hear the end of it.
Hate the game, don't hate the player, boys.
I can hate both.
I will never hear the end of it.
All right. So let's do a sign off before we all jump off and kind of joke around and Dave bust our balls here for a while. So I'm gonna say thank you to Bobcat Attack. I needed to see a MAC fan base truly melt down to put kind of how we were in perspective. Some of us were having minor hissy fits. There was picking on going on in the Bull Run fan base. But, man, within 5 minutes of that interception return for a touchdown, you guys were already in full meltdown. I salute you. Nobody goes nuclear like the Bobcat fan base. I look forward to just popping over there every week this next month. Thank you. Matt?
I just realized that I forgot a really important part of my Brewpeg pick, which is that in a battle of schools with pretty clear connections to 19th century presidents, UB's president, Millard Fillmore from, which I think is a pretty big deal for a college. I think if you take over for someone and then you do such a poor job that the guy wins his job back when you leave, we should have a problem with that. And Grover Cleveland was from Buffalo, so Buffalo's been beating Miami for 120 years now. In actual shout-outs, I told myself that I wouldn't do another quick Olympic roundup, but I have nothing else to say.
Just pick one team, Matt.
I'm going to pick 2 teams, and you're going to listen to me do it.
Well, that's why there's a thing called a throat punch.
Very quickly, volleyball did something they've never done before in 17 years of being in the MAC this weekend. They went on the road for a pair of games and won them both. All of a sudden, they've got a winning streak. I feel like I should get the clip from a major league. We win one game, and then we win another one, and that's called a winning streak. They're now 4, pretty crappy, and it is, but they're also 4-6 in conference, and they're currently sitting in for a berth for the MAC tournament, which last year they managed that in the top 8. It's the first time they ever finished 8th in the MAC. They had 6 conference wins last year. It was the tied for the most they ever had in conference. And this year they're in the same spot after 10 games they were last year. They're playing real good. At times they've got 4 freshmen on the court. They lost their best player to transfer, or just not even a transfer, she just left. They lost their coach from last year.
Hilarious.
They lost a lot from last year. And
Is that what they tell you?
we were kind of preparing for like a 3-win season in all seriousness, and we're at 5 now. But even so, this is a team that's trending up and doing it very quickly, and they'd never before won both games of a road trip in conference before since joining the MAC. They've got at least 2 of their next 3, depending on how much you think of Ball State. Maybe all 3 of their next 3 are winnable. They've never won 7 games in the MAC, and it looks like it could be doable this year. Great debut for Coach Brown Lipsitz if she were to get this team even back to 6 wins, given all the turnover from last year. The other thing, very quickly, cross-country championships, MAC championships are this Saturday on Halloween. I've been hyping both of these teams all season. The men have been hurt a little bit by injuries, but they should be mostly healthy. They were aiming for top 3 last year and missed it by just 3 seconds from any one of their runners. I think they're good enough to finish 2nd or 3rd this year. The women have finished 7th 3 years in a row. This year they've got 2 freshmen who have stepped right into their top 5 and who are really amazing. The big name to know is Sharday Henry, who's out of Canada. I love when our Olympic sports recruits from Canada. And her favorite movie is Goon, so she's a hockey fan. It's good things. I think that women's cross country could finish third or fourth and really jump up from where they've been the last couple of years at seventh. I'm very excited for this meet. I'll have a preview on the site this week in addition to everything else. And I'll stop now because Dave's going to get me a throat punch if you read the game thread. We've got to be on guard now that he's back.
So Drew's going to give a salute to someone who's up in my neck of the woods. I was actually planning to attend a high school basketball game next month at some point, but it turns out that may be moot if he ends up making this decision too fast. Drew?
Yeah, so Brock Bertram, which you guys, if you have any Twitter presence, you probably know the narrative already, but he took his official visit this past weekend. So he saw Bulls madness, he saw the Bulls dominate Ohio in football. So kind of exciting. Top 250 national, top 50 in his position, which is center, and top 3 in the state of Minnesota. He said on Twitter today that he will be making a decision soon. So 247 lists his offers at Green Bay, Texas Tech, Miami, and LaSalle. It doesn't list UB, so maybe there's others offers out there that I'm not completely aware of. But his decision is coming soon. UB has 1 spot left open. Please let it be Brock.
So as a note, Zach Filzen was also from the Twin Cities. I believe he was from Lakeville, which is just south of Apple Valley, and he now coaches up there. So there is some precedence for UB reaching up into the North Star State. There are a lot of cool people here. But we'll move on, and Dave wants to get us back on track for football, so we're going to hand it to Dave.
And I'll take about something completely else. I would like to give a shout-out to and I'm going to assume it's a lady who did this. Sorry, ladies in the house. But the lady who actually cashed the check, who said, you know what, I got a great idea. Let me highlight the frozen tundra. Let me make the one conference that is completely barren, and let's make this a faceless, nameless commercial, and let's try to make a conference as shitty as possible and actually have a commercial saying, we are modest. We play in shit facilities. We have the worst weather in the world. Hey, let's cash that check. That's in the can. Let's do that. My shout-outs are to that lady who still has a job today. Thank you. Moving on.
Dave, we missed you. We missed you very, very much. Conrad, your shout-out.
Okay, I got 2. I'm gonna give it to Joe Licata. Hasn't beat anybody. The corporation that I fight every week. But so I was looking at. I have this thing of who Drew Willie has beaten, who Joe Licata has beaten, and who we've beaten. And winning against a 5-2 team is actually one of the best wins we've had, even though it was Ohio. It's actually pretty funny that it is Ohio because I'm looking at our best wins. Ball State's going to be one. They were 12-0, 100%. And then the next one is going to be Ohio 2011, Chaz Anderson. They were 4-1, 80%. The next one after that is going to be Ohio 2013. They were 6-2, 75%. And the next one after that is going to be Ohio on Saturday. They were 5-2, 71%. I think it's pretty funny because, that's 11, 13, well, 11, 14, and 15. 11, 13, 15, where Ohio has come in. And you can see it on Bobcat Attack. Buffalo's garbage. They don't have anyone. We're going to blow them over. We're really worried about next week. And that's the pregame talk. And then, 5 minutes into the first quarter, it's like, our season's over. Let's fire Solage. We're the worst. I just love it. I love the November meltdown because I love when they're so high when they get to us and they just crash. And, you see their dreams, fall to pieces in your hands. You see them crying, and it's great. You don't hear from that jackass Tim McVay. It's just beautiful. I thought about just quitting the blog and just walking away with that loss or that win in my back pocket. Like I said in Twitter, it feels like it's 2 wins. We win and Ohio loses. It's just the best feeling in the world. And then my last shout out is to that north end zone. It's the end zone of the phantom safety. Is not the end zone of the Hail Mary. It's the exclusive end zone to Ohio misery. It's the end zone of the fake safety, of the non-safety. It's the end zone of Alozi's pick 6. Is the end zone of Williamson's pick 6. That's just the end zone of sadness for Ohio fans. and I love it. And we should just we should paint it gold around it.
Put a big
Yeah,
plaque
put a little plaque there. Put a banner.
Ohio seasons die.
Yeah, I think if we have the MAC championship banner on all the way back in the top of the end zone on one side, on the north end zone all the way in the back, just be like the Ohio Tears end zone. I would love to know how much I can pay Danny White to like put that in the field, the end zone of Ohio Tears. 20,000, 22,000. I don't have it yet, but when I do, that's where it's going.
It's a wise investment.
You'd be better off just being UB's athletic director someday, Conrad. I look forward to it. All right, so that's all we have tonight. We're gonna jump off and kind of, like I said, Dave's gonna beat us all up a little bit. He's been saving some stuff up. And thanks from Matt, Conrad, Drew, Dave, and myself. We'll see you next week.